Okay.
Thank you.
And then I'll go ahead and share, and then I'll pull up an Excel spreadsheet. I have one up now. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to just go ahead and label this one. Can everyone see it okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we'll just call this budget. Just call this Melix project budget. Okay, so I am going to create a project budget. Okay, so I'm just going to do this just on the fly here. So let's say that I am going to look at how to streamline the patient intake, okay, for a hospital. All right. So that'll be my project. So this may or may not be a real project. I have no idea, but I'm going to call it optimization. Okay.
Will you also include the salary for or funding for mentors?
No, not necessarily, unless that's something that you're going to have them do in your project. If you're going to have them play a role in your project, right?
But their time wouldn't be considered as part of my budget.
Well, it depends on what your budget. What are you creating a budget for? Are you creating a budget for your project that you're working on for your capstone?
Yes, and the time of like personnel, like people who are going to be involved in the project.
So if your mentor is playing a role in your project, and
directly, okay.
Yeah, directly, then you would put it there. But if she's just helping you with your if she's playing a role for you to get your master's degree, then that's not something that you would necessarily put in your project. The way I guess I would look at it is if anybody else could take this project budget and then go and implement it without you, then that's how your project budget, it would be sort of a standalone, right?
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so let's just say, I'm going to optimize the workflow in the intake department. So my department is intake. That's my department, okay? And I'm going to involve, let's say, the biggest person that I'm going to work on is the intake clinician, okay? But I have an assistant as well, okay? This is a small little intake department, okay? So I have got one FTE. So we're going to put FTE here. Oh, bouncing around here. Here is my department and my FTE, okay? And my annual salary, okay? And then, actually, I'm going to put the, there's my annual FTE, okay? But let's say that I'm going to only need a portion. So I'm going to put percent needed, okay? Just so that we're clear on what that is. And that may also translate to hours because I might be paying an hourly rate. So then I'm going to go ahead and put hourly rate just so that we can make it clean, okay? And then there's the total. Okay, so I have one intake clinician and one full-time assistant, okay? But I only need them, the project is only going to take, let's say, out of 52 weeks, it's going to take 20 weeks, okay? So that's 20 divided by 52, which is a percentage of their time that I'm going to need, right? So that's my FTE, that's my percent. So in order to calculate their hours on the project, I'm going to take my FTE times my percent needed times 2080 hours. And I don't know if you guys know that number, but that 2080 represents 52 weeks, okay, times 5 hours a week, times 8 hours a day. Okay, so if you were to multiply all those together, then you would get 2080. Okay, did you guys see that? So again, it's number of weeks are 52 weeks, 5 days a week at 8 hours equals 2080. So when you're usually, you know, kind of trying to figure out how many hours that an FTE works, you can use that formula, okay? So I multiplied my, again, this is, what did I say, 20 weeks out of the total year. So I got about 38%. And then I multiply that times my annual hours to figure out how many hours I was going to need for each employee, okay? Is that clear?
Yeah, I think from what I understood the budget narrative to be, that it would be more of a paragraph, like writing in paragraphs instead of calculation. Was that what you were?
What I'm going to first show you, though, is how to calculate it. And then we can talk about what it would look like in a narrative, okay? But I think the important thing is that you understand how to do it. Then you can describe it in a narrative form, okay? So then what we're going to do is next we're going to look at the intake clinician and say that, you know, an intake clinician might make $75,000 a year. Again, I'm just making this up, divided by 2080 hours. So that would give me about 360. Whoops, I think I paid them $750,000. They would get about a $36 an hour. That would be their hourly rate. So if I multiply their hourly rate times the number of hours I need for them on the project, that gives me their salary, right? This is the salary that I would need. And this, for the assistant, I'm going to assume the assistant makes about $60,000 a year divided by 2080. So again, that's about $28, $28 an hour. Might be a little bit high, but we pay well, okay? So that's about $23,000 that I would need for both of them. I'm going to sum that together, okay? There's $51,000 of salaries I'm going to need for my project. And then I'm going to add benefits, okay? And the benefits, I'm going to use a calculation for benefits, which is sort of industry standard. And it can actually range from anywhere from, like, you know, roughly 25% of salary to 45% of salary. It's really dependent on your organization, but I'm going to just go ahead and say 30. So I'm going to take my benefit percentage, which is 30%, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and just use that percentage there, okay? And then I'm going to multiply my salary times 30% to get my benefits. This is the rate of benefits, and this is the amount of benefits. Benefits, okay? And then we're just going to add them together to get your total weight, you know, salary plus benefits. Okay? So then you're going to basically take that benefit number plus your salary number, and then you're going to get your cost of your 2 FTEs. I'll sum it up, okay? So we know our salary and benefits is about $67,000 for my staff on my project, okay? And then let's say that I have some supplies that I'm going to have them use, and trying to think what other direct costs. Maybe there's a special laptop we need, okay, for the project. And so what I'll do on the supplies is I'll just put my number in. You know, they're going to need, for the 20 weeks, they're going to need 50 cents of supplies each week, you know, times 20 times 2, just so we get, remember, that's not very much, is it? Let's do $5. Okay, so there's my supplies number, okay, and then, you know, laptop is going to cost $2,000, let's just say, okay? All right, So here we go. And so then I have my total budget, all right? And I'll sum that up. Now these are my direct costs, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so those are my direct costs. And you guys might have a supervisor that you're going to add to your pool as well, right? Like you might need to have somebody that comes in and looks at your project. You might have other departments that are actually directly involved. This is probably really simple, okay? But just to give you the idea. So there's my total project budget. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and say, okay, I'm going to look at my indirect costs, right? Okay, and I might have, you know, a couple different cost pools. I have a G&A, which is, you know, going to be my HR team, my executive team, my legal team, my insurance, you know, just whatever, right? Okay, and then I'm going to have my, let's see, what else?
IT.
Facilities, yep. Facilities team, and then I'm going to have my IT team. Okay, great. Those are my 3 cost pools. So here's my pools dollars, okay? So my G&A, this is my total organization now, right? Is going to be, let's say, $5 million, okay? All right, my facilities cost pool is going to be $3 million. And my IT cost pool is going to be $2 million. Okay, oops, one more zero. All right. Now I'm coming up with an allocation methodology. This is what we learned, right? And my allocation methodology for G&A is going to be, I'm going to use expenses. Okay. For facilities, I'm going to use square footage. And for IT, I'm going to use FTE. Okay? All right. Now, if you say, hey, we already have a laptop right here, why do I have to add more IT? Maybe that's what you'll ask. Well, this is going to be IT like network, servers, help desk, other stuff like that, right? That are out there that are going to be indirect. So it's not your direct IT, but it's your other stuff that you're benefiting from, okay? All right. Okay, so then we have our allocation methodology. Now let's go ahead and look at what our allocation, our allocation drivers. Let's look at what they are from a company perspective. So the organizational, I guess, metric, right? Or drivers, let's call it drivers. Okay, so expenses. So we know that we have total expenses over here of 69,700, right? This is our project. Okay. But we also know that our overall organization, the agency that we're a part of, has expenses, total expenses of 45 million. I'm just making this up, okay? Okay. All right, $45 million is what our expenses are for the total. I'm going to go ahead and say we're also going to add square footage. So I'm going to say that I'm going to need 500, let's say 1,000 square feet. Not much. Okay. I think I got one extra zero. But the organization in total has, let's say 7 million square feet. Okay. It's a very big space. Okay. Again, that's 70 million. There we go. And then last FTE, I know that my FTE, we just calculated it, right, is going to be adding these two right here. Okay, so it's 77, or I should say 0.77, right? So it's not quite 1. So it's, if I were to convert that to a non-percentage, it would be 0.77. And let's say that the FTE in the agency is 5,000. Okay? All right, so now I know what my larger drivers are here. Right? And so I can then estimate what we can do. What we had before is we can look at our pools and we can look at our totals, right? And we can calculate what our driver is for allocation. You guys remember that? So we'll take our dollar pool divided by the driver, okay? And we'll just divide those by each driver. So this is square footage, and this is FTE. Okay, we did this in our homework, right? So this shouldn't be difficult, right? And then I'm going to use that same percentage to multiply against my 3 drivers right here. The metrics that I'm going to allocate against. So I'll just go ahead and do that over here. Just kind of make another little column. Okay, so then I'll take that. I have $69,000 of expenses at this metric, means that I have $7,744 worth of expenses related to G&A. Okay. Then I've got facilities, and I've got IT. Oops. So I'll do the same here. I'll take my 1,000 and multiply it times my square footage. Okay, I've got $428 of square footage that I have to pay for, or excuse me, facilities, 0.77 of IT times the 400. Okay, I've got $300 of IT, 307. Add those together. My indirect costs, right? So I can add that now. My indirect costs, the number is 88481, goes right here. So I'm going to add that to my costs, which were 69,000. So then I've got a total of 78,181 is my grand total, my budget of my project. Okay. Any questions on how I put that together? Did I go too fast? Yeah?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. So what area do you want me to go over again? I'm happy to, or do you want me to just go through the whole thing again?
I think I lost you at the allocation methodology and organization drivers and how you matched it with the salary portion and benefits.
Okay.
That's for me. I don't know about anybody else though.
Okay, let's get back, because this is what we had done in our last chapter. So I just assume you guys kind of remember that, but let's go back. Okay, so what we have to do is we have these cost pools, right? So we know that this is how much we have in the large organization. So we know that our G&A costs us $5 million, our facilities are $3 million, IT's $2 million. And so now we have to figure out is how do we allocate some portion of this cost pool to our little project, right? How do we do that? Well, we came up with these drivers here. These are the drivers, the methodology that we're going to use to allocate. So essentially, it's expenses for all the departments or projects that are out there. We're going to use that. We're going to use square footage as a way to do it, and then we're going to use FTE for IT. So we think these 3 match up well with the 3 cost pools. Does everyone at least understand that piece of how I came up with those 3 allocation methodologies?
Yes.
So we could, if we were a revenue department, we could have used revenue, but we're not revenue, so that's not an option. So I use expense because that is one that a lot of areas do use, is total expense. We could have used salary expense as well, right? We could have used that, but I just used total expense. And then, so then what I did here is I just did our calculation of what metric we would create. So we would have to look at first what our total agency metrics are for each of these. So it might be easier to bring this down here actually when I do that. Okay, let me just do that because it might be a little confusing because I have it in a different location. So from an organizational standpoint, we know we have $45 million worth of expenses, right? As an organization, we have 7 million square feet. We have 5,000 FTE. So those are the totals that we have. So we have to allocate the pools using these allocation drivers. So what we can do is we can calculate a rate, essentially, right? This is what I had suggested we do. We calculate a rate that says for every 40, so for every 5, or I should say, for every 45 million in expenses, we're going to be allocating 11 cents to, or every million in expenses, we're going to allocate 11 cents of our G&A cost pool. Okay? So that's the multiplier. 11 cents times whatever our total expenses are, we need to use 11 cents. So if we have $69,000 worth of expenses, we have to multiply that times 11 cents to get our portion of the G&A cost pool. So it's really just creating a relationship. So when I taught you guys how to do this before, I think I used a different way, which I find a little easier, but I know the book is instructing us to do it this way with this kind of rate that we create. But what I had done when I did it is I basically said, let's take our project drivers, which we know our project has 69,700 in expenses. We have 1,000 square feet in our project, and we have 0.77 FTE. And then what I had done is I just found a percentage and said, okay, well, we in our project have, I take the project expense divided by the total, and that says we have a 0.2% or 0.15%. Our project represents 0.15% of the total organization expense. So that's how much we represent of the total organization. And the same thing goes for these. We can come up with a percentage and say we represent, our square footage is 1,000 square feet, represents 0.01% of the total agency square footage. And our FTE, because we only have 0.1, only represents a 0.02% of the total agency square footage. No, excuse me, FTE. So if then we multiply that percentage, and let's say we're only going to take 0.02% of the cost, because that's all we have, right? Of the 0.02% of the cost pool. That would equal $308. If we only take 0.01% of the facilities cost pool, it's only $429. If we take 0.15% of the G&A, it's $7,744. So that's sort of like the way that you can do it, kind of two different ways. I don't know if that is helpful or not. But there's just a couple ways to do it. I kind of like this way a little bit easier. To me, it's more intuitive. Like we're trying to figure out what percent of the agency, whatever proxy we're using, whether it's FTE or facilities, we're trying to figure out what our percentages of that allocation methodology. And then that's the percentage we're using to take, that's the percentage we're taking of the cost pool. Okay. So does everyone get, there's like a couple different ways to do that, but that's essentially how you're allocating those indirect costs to your project. Anybody have a challenge with that? Aura, do you understand that? You get it? Okay. All right. So then should we move on, or do you move on to maybe what the narrative might look like now that we've done this?
Yes, please.
Yes, the narrative, please.
Okay. So then if we were starting a narrative, you know, what we would want to do is we would want to start out by just saying, like, you know, we put a salary heading possibly. I mean, you're going to have an introduction, as you know, right? Because you want to describe your project. So your project description. Okay. And here I'm going to say I am.
I don't think
Dawn, are you,
see-
we can't see the Word document, or unless you're not planning for it, like,
Oh, that's weird.
we only see Excel right now.
Oh, that's strange.
So I think you have to go to share and stop sharing and then select the Word document.
Okay, how about this? Would this be okay if I write my narrative in a Word document? Can I just do it right here? Is that okay?
Yep.
Instead of putting it in Word, I'm just going to write it right here, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I'm going to have my introduction, right? And I'm going to have my project description. And this is where I'm going to say, you know, my project, you know, will optimize the intake process by reducing, you know, 20 minutes per patient, and yada, 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 right? I'm going to describe that in a paragraph and sort of get into a little bit more detail about how I'm going to do it. Then I'm going to talk about my budget. And I would suggest, you know, you do an opening paragraph sort of that just describes the, my budget is estimated to be 78.181, which represents 20 weeks of 0.77 FTE. And, you know, then I could go into the details of that and like the salary, you know, and benefits costs will be, and go ahead and put my number, right? 69,700, which is made up of, you know, 2 full-time equivalents. I'm sorry, my spelling's probably not great, guys. I'm going really fast here. And the 1 clinical intake staff and 1 assistant, right? Which will both work for 20 weeks out of 1 year, right? The clinician's annual salary is X, and the hourly rate is Y, right? I am assuming, you know, X percent of benefits. Let's see, X percent of benefits, which is, you know, industry, whatever. If you want to say industry standard, or you could say my which, you know, represents my agency's benefits percentage. You can do that. That's fine. And, you know, so it's just walking through all the pieces. And then you want to have another paragraph where it talks about your supplies, you know, are needed, you know, X types of supplies are needed. And how did you come up with the number for those? Like, what are you multiplying X times Y? What is that you're multiplying against each other? And just put it in a sentence form, really, is all you need to do, okay? And then when you get into the indirect cost section, right, you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna start with, you know, I assumed 3 cost pools, as follows, right? G&A, which includes, X, Y, and Z, and facilities, and the IT department. I think it would be good to explain what are in those, right? So like, give some descriptions about what are in your cost pools, and share sort of like why you selected the allocation methodology that you did. I selected, total expenses for G&A because, explain why that makes sense, right? And then square footage for facilities. Again, that may be the best way to do it, but just to sort of explain that a little bit. And then just, explain how the math works, by, taking, total facilities, or maybe something like my project will utilize 1,000 square feet, which represents, what did we say, 0.11% of the total facility footprint of the agency, right? Of the agency. Therefore, I will allocate 0.11% of the facilities cost pool of $3 million, which equates to, what was it? $429. So you can kind of build that up, and that's essentially then how you're putting that together. Okay. Is that clear? So we're at 7:36, and what I was hoping we could kind of shift gears, unless you have any more questions on the narrative, I was thinking we would spend a little bit of time on the homework.
That would be great. Thank you.
Anybody have any last questions before we flip into the homework?
Nope.
Okay, beautiful.
No, thank you.
So, well, let me start by asking, how did you guys find the homework? Did you find it difficult, or did you find it challenging, or was this not as bad as you thought? Tell me just give me an idea of where you guys are with some of the concepts here. Has anyone had a chance? I mean, you might not have had a chance to get into it yet. I don't know. You're waiting to go through this office hours first before you actually get into it.
So the first few seemed reasonable.
Sorry?
The first few problems seemed reasonable in terms of following the formula.
Right. So what I would definitely strongly suggest, is that you guys do these problems in Excel and make sure that you're using the Excel formulas that they give you, because I think, they're really good shortcuts, okay? And I don't really think that you need to memorize so much the formulas for present value or for future value or net present value. I think it's more that I just want you to play around with the problems so that you understand what the concepts are, and you understand that there are formulas in Excel that can help you calculate these kinds of things, okay? So it's really just, even if you were to use the book examples and to kind of recreate those book examples in Excel, just so you can see how they work, and then, you'll get the idea, and then you can go into the homework problems and then use whatever you created that is accurate because of the book. Then you can use the same you can set that template up, so to speak, and just go ahead and put in your new numbers, right? So I would definitely strongly suggest that. Now there are, as I mentioned, the book shares a lot of, a lot of formulas that are in Excel already that make this really easy. So hopefully you guys have seen that. So for instance, if you were to put present value, like PV in Excel, you see that it comes up with a formula right here. And you can just click into that formula or double click it, and then it tells you, it kind of walks you right through what you need to put in Excel for that formula. So if your first problem in your book was something about like, give us the present value of $500 or $5,000 for 5 years at an interest rate of 8%, right? And if you wanted to figure out what the future value of that is, you can just put in your formula FV, right? Just double click it, right? And then it asks you, it kind of walks you through it. So what's your rate? Well, we know, right, that the rate is 0.08. So we just put that right in. Then it asks for N period, which is your number of periods. It's 5. And then it asks for PMT. And if you read your book, PMT is about equal payments over time. In this example, it's just one payment of 5,000. So we would kind of put a little another little comma, which basically means 0 for payments. It's basically just not having any payments. Then you add your present value of 5,000, and you close, and then it just gives you your answer. There's your answer, right? So in 5 years, if you were to invest $5,000 at 8% interest over 5 years, it would equal $7,346.64. Okay? So that concept is, it can be pretty easy, right? You just need to know what your formula is. And conversely, if you were to go backwards and say, okay, I'm going to find out what's the present value, right, of, a rate of 8%, period of 5 years, future value of this, right? And you're going to go backwards and you're going to say, oh, it's $5,000, right? So you can go backwards or forwards based on these formulas, but you just need to know what your interest rate is. Interest rate. You need to know what your present, either your present value or your future value, because you're solving for one or the other, right?
Yes.
Or your number of periods. Okay? So that's really all you're doing for these first few problems. The book is asking, and I'm obviously not going to do the problem for you, but I just want to make sure that you understand how to do them. So I think these are pretty simple. Does anyone want to go through another example of future or present value like this?
No.
Yeah? Okay.
No.
Okay, good. So that's the first set of questions, and then they ask for the next set is about compounding, and so really the way that these future value and present value formulas work is they're using a period of 1 year, or they're saying that an n, the period, is equal to 1 year. So if you put 2, if n equals 2, that means 2 years. If n equals 3, it means 3 years. So what you have to kind of do is, if you're going to change this to a semi-annual or a quarterly payment, then you can do that. You can multiply your n times your, what you're essentially doing is you're dividing your year into multiple pieces, right? But you also have to divide your interest rate. That's the only thing you have to remember. So if you had, as I said, 1 year is, you have an interest rate, and you have periods, okay, and you have present value, let's say, right? And in 1 year, your interest rate is 10%. Your periods are 1 because it's 1 year, and your present value, let's say, is 100. Okay. If you decided to turn that into a semi-annually calculation, then, and we can just quickly do that formula. So there's a future value, right? So you're going to take your rate times your number of periods. And I'm going to, again, bypass the payment and take my present value, okay? So actually, what did I do here? 10%, 1 period. I must have missed something. Let me see, what did I miss? Oh, I see. I multiplied instead of put a comma. Let's do that. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right. So, so $100 in 1 year at 10% is going to be 110. Okay. But if I want to calculate what the value will be if I do it semi-annually, then I have to divide the interest rate by 2. Okay. So I'm going to divide that by 2. And then I have to multiply my periods times 2. Because now I'm doing it every 6 months. So I'm gonna have 2 different periods within a year. And then I can use my same present value. And my formula is going to change. It's going to be a little bit higher. So essentially, the difference then between just an annual compounding and a semi-annual compounding, you can see it's slightly higher, right? Means that we're getting additional 25 cents, okay? And if you did it quarterly, my gosh, I don't know why I have so much trouble in Excel. If you do it quarterly, you take the 0.1, which is the original, divide by 4, because now it's quarterly, it's 4 different periods. You're dividing your year into 4, okay? You take your periods and you multiply that times 4. So again, I'm not sure if I said this right, but you divide your interest rate by the number of periods, and you multiply your periods. So you've got 4 periods now with an interest rate of 0.025. Okay. So then you're essentially then, if you move your formula over, then you're making a little bit more money, making another 13 cents. So what's happening, if you think about it, is every 3 months, you're calculating your interest. First example, you're only calculating once a year. In a semi-annual, you're calculating it twice a year. So you're able to calculate interest on your principal twice. So the first time you're gonna get in, you're gonna make money, and then the second time you do it, you're gonna be able to make money on the money that you made. If that makes sense, right? So you're actually compounding your interest. And then if you do it 4 times, you get to do that 4 times. So you're going to be making more money every time you do that. And if you were able to earn monthly interest, then you would be multiplying this times 12. Okay, then it would just be, taking your interest rate divided by 12, taking your periods, they would be 12. You'd still have your present value of 100, and then you'd bring your formula over, and now you made almost 50 cents. By doing it monthly. Okay, so does everyone get that? Sort of understand how that works?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So the next, I think that's what we did on the second one, 9.2. 9.3 is looking at compounding periods per year at an EAR rate, right? So I'm going to just go into another one here. So I think, again, there's what we call an effective rate and a nominal rate. So there's the nominal rate, interest rate, and that may be where you earn 6%. The bank's telling you you're earning 6%. I think in the book, the example was, let's see here. This is 9.3. What is the effective annual rate if the stated rate is 8% and compounding occurs semi-annually? okay? And it was kind of like what we did, but there is a formula, and it's called effect, okay? So if you put that in Excel, effect, it also will help you, and it will say, what's your nominal rate? Okay, your nominal rate's 6%. What's your periods? And we can say over 5 years if you want. And what would that be? It's 0.06. One, it's a higher, I guess, is what it would say, right? Then if we had it, actually make that 1, not 5, sorry. For 1 year, it's the same, but if we do 2 years, then you can see it's a little bit higher, right? For 3 years, right? So just sort of like you can use this formula to find out what the effective rate is over a period of time, okay? Again, this is in the book, and there's some really good examples in the book that actually have little Excel spreadsheets that if you were to just follow those Excel spreadsheets and you were to use the formulas that they give you in the book, use those in your Excel spreadsheets, you should be able to create a little template that you can put the numbers in, okay? And you'd be able to find the answers. So what I would suggest is you use the book first, the examples in the book in terms of the chapter, and then once you found out you're doing it accurately, then you can go and put your homework in it, okay? Does that make sense? So we've got 10 minutes left, and I know that there's a lot of material here. Is there any particular place that we should go? Do you want to go to uneven cash flows? Would that be a good place to go?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's look at winning the lottery, because I think this is an interesting one. Okay, so let's say that you win the lottery and you get $20 million. Okay, for winning the lottery. And you can take that over 20 years, you can divide that by 20, and you can get $1 million a year over 20 years. And so I'm going to just go ahead and put my periods here. Okay, just so we have that. There's my 20 years. Okay. All right, and so they're going to give us $1 million over 20 years. So the question then is, well, what is today, right? If we look at our interest rates, and let's say that we have a 10% interest rate. Because often what they do is they'll give you an option. They'll give you an option to get a lump sum or get an annuity over a number of years, right? And so what you want to do is figure out what's better. Is it better for me to just get the $1 million? Bless you, Aura. Poor thing. To get the $1 million for the next 20 years? Or is it better to just get the lump sum, right? And they're going to give you a number of lump sum, but you want to calculate yourself what you think that lump sum's worth. And if you say that you know that 10% is a good rate of return that you could get if you had that money, so you want to get some idea of what that would be. So what you want to do is you want to do a present value formula calculation. Again, if you do PV, you can put the rate in, which is 10%, the number of periods, which I believe in this case is 19, because we're assuming that it's at the end of year one, not at the beginning of year one. So that gets a little tricky, but that does they describe that in the book, okay? And then so you're going to do a payment of $1 million, right? Or actually, even better, what we could do is we could, well, we'll do it this way. One. And then let's just see, what is that? Okay, that's not right. I think I put one too many. All right, let's see. how many zeros do I have? Yeah, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So if we were to take the present value of the $1 million, the $20 million, it's only worth $8 million at a 10% what we call discount rate. Now, if that discount rate went lower, and we made it be so let's say we set a 0.025, okay? Then the lower the interest rate, the higher the present value is, right? And if it was only 1%, then we would get the present value of our future would be higher, right? And so it's kind of inverse, right? So that's kind of how you look at the present value calculation. So if they were offering you, let's say that the interest rates were, we felt good that we were going to get about 5% interest rate over the next 20 years, and they were offering you $15 million of present value, would that be a good deal to take? Because you're calculating that your present value of all your future payments is worth 12 million. If they say that they're going to give you 15 million,
that would be better.
That would be a good deal, right?
Yep.
But if they said, oh, we'll give you 10 million, and you would say, no, I don't want 10 million. I'll go ahead and take the $1 million over 20 years. It's a better, right?
Yep.
So again, these are the kind of analyses that help decisions between sort of one scenario and another scenario. That's what a lot of the problems from 919 onwards are really giving you, those sort of like options to think about and use the math to help figure them out. Okay. So we've got about 4 minutes left. This went really fast. Is there any particular problem or question that you want to go over?
I came on a little late, but so I don't know if you went through 9.5 already, but how would we do the annuities due with the function?
Annuity, so it's actually quite easy. So if you look in your book, do you have your book? Do you have to have your book?
Oh no, I can get it.
So 9.5, annuities are due. Okay, yeah. So if you look at your book, and I'm going to tell you what page, just to make it a little bit easier here. If you look at, just looking at this. Yeah, annuities due. So look at page 322, okay, or 323. And if you see that there's a spreadsheet solution, do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that spreadsheet solution is kind of giving you the answer here, basically, this problem. And this is what the annuities do. It's basically giving you a little mini problem. And if you create an Excel spreadsheet that looks like this on page 323, you can come up with the same answer that they came up with, right? So their question is, if you had 3 years, right? You get $100 over 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you want to calculate what your future value is going to be, right, over those 3 years, and your interest rate for all 3 of those years, I believe, is 5%, right? So you can create your little formula. I mean, again, your Excel spreadsheet, and say, what is your N, which is your number of periods? What is your payment that you're going to get every year? What is your rate? Okay, and then you can do a formula. Okay, and that formula, again, if you just put equals FV, which is future value, it tells you pick your rate. And let me go ahead and put the number in here. So in this case, the rate is 5%. Okay, 5%. The payment is 100, and I'm going to put it as a negative because that's what they like to have. And then your periods are 3 years. So again, I'm going to do my future value. Okay, I'm going to do my rate, which is 0.05, comma, my periods are 3, comma, my payment, PMT, which is 100, that's the annuity. I'm getting 3 years of $100 a year, and then I'm going to close my parentheses. Okay, so basically that equals 315.01. At least it's supposed to, but something didn't work. Let me see, what did I do wrong here? Oh, I know. I think it's because I didn't do my present value. Let's see. So I have a 5%. Is that what they're using? 5%? 5. Oh, okay. I know why. It's because these are due, right? Okay. So here's the difference. When it says a regular annuity versus annuity due, the difference is whether you're getting that annuity at the beginning or the ending of your period. So if you're looking at 3 years, you want to measure year 1 at the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Year 2, beginning to the end. Year 3, beginning to the end. You're getting your money at the end of the year of year 3. It's 3 full years. If you're getting it at the beginning of the year of year 3, it's only 2 full years. Okay, so what you need to do in the formula here, and it says this in the book, is you put a 1 at the end. 1 means end, and then it'll give you your number. It should give you your number that you're looking for here. And it has, in the book, it has an extra little comma, which helps, which basically is, again, if you do your FV formula, future value, you see it says rate, a period, payment, present value, and type. So really you either do a payment or a present value. You don't do both. So for whichever you're not doing, you need to put a blank space, and then it will calculate it correctly. So in this case, we're going to put a blank space for the PV because this problem is not asking for a present value.
Mm-hmm.
Looking for a rate times a period times a payment. And then I'm going to put a blank space by putting 2 commas. And then I'm going to put a 1, which means,
Okay.
and then that's 331. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
But again, the book has some really good examples for a lot of these problems. So I definitely urge you to go through the book. And then just email me if there's other questions you have about this, because I know it gets a little tricky. But I definitely would like you to go through the book with Excel first before, just see if you can fix it. Okay? But, as I said, some of them in the back and the ends of the chapters are a little challenging. So, okay. Any last questions? Well, hopefully this was helpful. And just send me an email, if you, have questions. But please, what I really would, I think is important is that you guys attempt the problems, you attempt to figure them out, you propose solutions, and then I can provide you with feedback. But what I don't want to do is just tell you how to do it, right? I think then that just defeats the purpose. So I'm asking that if you are going to email me with questions, please, give me your thoughts on how to do something, and then I'm happy to provide feedback. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.